Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for Breastfeeding Basics. I'm Dr. Kimmy Trinicki.
I'm Catherine Havener.
And we are so glad to be bringing this to you. In times like these, sometimes it's hard to find good lactation, breastfeeding classes, even lactation support can be limited access sometimes. So we want to make sure that we get this info out there for all moms so that everyone can have a successful breastfeeding journey. You guys go into it feeling empowered, educated, just ready to go. And when you do run into problems, you kind of have an idea of where to take things, how to address it, because an empowered mom is a very powerful, strong mom, so we want that for everyone. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yay, thank you. So I am an international board certified lactation consultant, also known as an IBCLC. I know that's a mouthful. If you haven't heard of an IBCLC, we're basically the highest type of credential in lactation world. We're the only board certified standardized credential out there. We're part of your healthcare team, so if you have breastfeeding challenges that you cannot solve at the peer level, your board certified lactation consultant, IBCLC, is the person to go to. So I'm one of those. I'm also a mother. I have 4 daughters. They're teenagers down to a 6-year-old. I breastfed for a long time myself. I breastfed for 10 years. Crazy, I know. I also have a children's book called Nurses When the Sun Shines. It's for mamas of toddlers who need to start sleeping at nighttime. Some toddlers just nurse all night. I was one of those, hence the reason for the book. And I'm have a wonderful husband, and my passion is attachment parenting, gentle parenting, breastfeeding, obviously, natural family living. So I'm here to share all the information today about breastfeeding, to that end. So
especially with the natural family living, that's going to come out especially in class 2, which is the problem solving. We'll talk about some of the more crunchy options as opposed to jumping to the antibiotics, the medications, things like that. And so another thing to point out with IBCLCs is because there is such a high credentialing, usually you guys are the ones who, if you want to, you can bill to insurance.
That's correct.
If it's covered by insurance.
That's right, and that's wonderful. It really helps. So all under the Affordable Care Act, all insurance providers are supposed to be covering lactation care, and sometimes you have to fight for it. So Aetna is probably one of the better ones as far as covering, but so yeah, definitely that's important.
And a little bit about me, for you, those of you who don't know me, I'm Kimmy Trinicki. I'm a certified pediatric and prenatal chiropractor. That is not something that I just made up on my own. I took boards for it. I took lots of certifications and classes for it. And I love doing it because that's where my passion lies. I love working with moms through their preconception journey, their pregnancy. I've been at lots of births, but especially seeing that brand new baby and helping them on that new journey into motherhood, is because that's such a big pivotal time in your life. So having someone who's fully invested in that whole journey with you, that's who I want to be for you. I'm also a wife. My husband is actually my business partner as well. He's also a chiropractor. We met in chiropractic school. Mom to a 2-year-old. We breastfed for about 17 months. And as with most moms, it's not always easy. So we've overcome some of our own challenges, and that's part of why I'm bringing this to you, is because I want to make sure that it's not so challenging for you.
So important.
We were very lucky that we had a really great lactation support team shortly after birth for us, and without that, we would not have made it 17 months. Maybe 17 hours? I don't know. It wouldn't have been long. And I also consider myself an advocate for the health of our next generation. So all the work that I do with moms, with women who are preconception, it's really, if we focus in that area and those early days of baby's life, we're really shaping the foundation of the future, and that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really the foundation of everything. It's the mind-body connection that we're helping with, and the bonding. So I think it's really a really wonderful package deal, and really great work that you do.
And it's fun. Babies are really cute too.
Perk of the jobs.
So for today, for our Breastfeeding Basics class, we are going to be going over several different things, but kind of the key highlight points are going to be positioning, latch, and supply. These are all big things that moms are asking questions about constantly. Moms, if you have your partner with you, I would strongly encourage them to watch this with you or after you, because my saving grace was my husband, honestly. He was present during our lactation appointments, and after a few days, you reach a breaking point where you're exhausted, and so because you're exhausted, you start to get lazy with your latch, and it doesn't feel good, and you think you're failing. The supply's not there. So my husband, because he was so present and tuned in during the lactation appointments, he was able to just sit down, tell me to take a nice deep breath, and say, okay, let's come back to the basics, because he knew that. And I think that's so important. So I really think that partners should be taking part in this. If you're watching this, you have access to this. This video is yours, so you can play this as many times as you want. So definitely make sure you come back to the basics when you are struggling.
Yeah, so even down the road when baby starts teething, I was like, back to basics.
Yes.
It's really important.
Very true. All right. There are so many great reasons to be breastfeeding your baby, but kind of the foundation of it all is it's just the perfect baby food. It combines nutrition with immune support and bonding, and especially that immune support is something that cannot be replaced. You can't put that in a bottle. And so our body is constantly responding to our baby's immune needs. Really cool stuff. The science behind it is amazing. But that's something that can't be replaced. So we love, whenever possible, giving our babies this outlet, this option for their nutrition, immune support, and bonding. Like I said, lots of benefits of breastfeeding. One of the biggest things is it's protective against illnesses for baby as well as for mom. So different things like ear infections, upper and lower respiratory infections, colds, viruses, staph infections, E. coli infections, allergies, dental caries, asthma, things like diarrhea, type 2 diabetes. All of these are lower rates in breastfed babies.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The thousands of elements that are in the breast milk itself do all of that. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so then on more the financial side of things, if a lot of women end up going back to work shortly postpartum. So babies who aren't getting sick as much, moms aren't having to take as many days off of work. Kids who aren't getting sick as much into elementary school, they're having fewer sick days out of school. They tend to have higher IQs, which I'm sure is part of the breast milk itself and what it does for the brain development, but also having fewer days out of school. Lots of good stuff. For mom, we talked about decreased likelihood of cancers.
Yeah, so there's a significantly less risk of uterine cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer. For example, if you breastfeed for about a year, it reduces your risk of breast cancer by 4.3%. And if you breastfeed between 6 and 9 months, it reduces your risk of ovarian cancer by 11%. So those are just some statistics. It's pretty amazing. It also lowers your risk of type 2 diabetes and postpartum depression. So it's then there's many more other benefits there, but we're hitting the high points.
Absolutely. We talked about it being more cost effective for families. I forgot to look up the number, but
I did.
Oh, you did? Yeah. What's the cost of formula for a month?
So the cost. Well, I went by. So it's by the ounce is about 11 cents, and for a year it's about $1,100. So by breaking that down to a month, it's around $100 a month.
Wow.
That's a lot. It adds up.
It does.
And that doesn't take out all the rest of the equipment that goes with needing to formula feed your baby and the formula itself. So and it definitely adds up. So the cost savings are really exponential.
That's a really big deal. And then we talked about how it's important for bonding. It's just there's nothing that being skin to skin with your baby is just so. I don't know, it's precious, it's special, it's something you'll never be able to do again in your life when you're older.
It's so true. It's so true. For me, it feels like you are in love. Like it's very strange, but it's as far as, because you always think that about a partner, but when you're breastfeeding your baby and things are well, and you're feeling great, it's like a love feeling. And in fact, it's driven by the love hormone oxytocin, so I guess that's not surprising. But that bond stays, and if you create that foundation of bond with breastfeeding as when they're babies, it really does build, because you have a connection as they get older. So it's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So breastfeeding is recommended by all the health authorities across the world and across the United States as well. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, the World Health Organization, they all recommend breastfeeding, and exclusive breastfeeding for at least 6 months of life, at which point complementary foods, solids can be introduced, but they still recommend, even the WHO recommends, breastfeeding into 12 months, and as long as you wish to do so, because breastfeeding is beneficial for the duration of breastfeeding. It doesn't cut. There's some thoughts out there that somehow breast milk is not nutritious after a year, and that's just hooey, honestly. It's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Likely that they won't need as much because they'll have a lot more solids at that point, but I mean, for us, honestly, it was more immune benefits than anything else after the 12-month mark. So.
Because kids are, obviously, toddlers are into everything, and they get dirty, and that they are getting the immune benefits, and whatever you are you're subjected to, whether germs or illnesses, bacteria, etc., they are getting protected from that too. So that's wonderful. Now, if you do cease breastfeeding prior to a year, we do the WHO, the World Health Organization, and of course all the others recommend using a formula, an iron fortified formula prior to the 12-month point, at which point then if you choose to do so, you can at 12 months introduce a cow's milk, or not. My kids did not do milk.
I was gonna say, a lot of people think that kids have to, for bone health, start cow's milk. Not true. Not true at all. If you are going to do it, don't do it before 12 months because their gut is just not ready for it.
Dairy is one of the highest allergens out there, so I think it's always a good idea to wait.
Yes.
If you're going to do it.
I agree.
So we're going to talk about the stages of breast milk right now. You may not have to necessarily even know that you're going from one stage to another, but I think as far as information is concerned, we want you to know that there are different stages of breast milk, and the first stage is colostrum. Colostrum is that very first milk that you will have, and you will even have it prenatally. In fact, if you try to squeeze your areola, your nipple, you might even be able to express a little bit, or maybe after you take off your shirt, you might notice a little crusty there. That's the colostrum, and it's there prenatally, and it's there for your baby once the baby is born, and it is like the supercharged nutrients for your baby. It's high in antibodies, it's protein, minerals, fat-soluble vitamins, and it truly is a powerhouse. It goes into your baby's body and it coats their GI system, and it literally protects them like a barrier from disease. So colostrum is so vitally important. Something to remember, very, very important, colostrum is measured in teaspoons. It's not measured in ounces. You are not going to see tons of colostrum coming out your nipples. It just doesn't happen. It's meant to be fed in very small quantities very frequently. Yeah.
I think one thing to note there is a lot of women do start developing that colostrum, but also I think some women at the end of their pregnancy, they've heard about friends leaking, or they've just heard about it on the internet. Don't think that if you're not leaking by the end of pregnancy that you're not going to make milk. I would say there are lots of women who don't.
I think most don't, honestly.
Yeah, especially for first pregnancies, maybe in subsequent. But first pregnancy is very typical to not leak. Doesn't mean that you're not going to make milk.
Absolutely
not.
So, no,
and that is not actually how you stimulate proper milk supply. So don't use that as a barometer.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as far as what it looks like, it's like we said, it's thick, and it's usually a yellow, but it can really be. We've seen colostrum that is greenish, orangish. So if you see somewhat strange colors, don't worry. It's whatever's in that colostrum is perfect for you and your baby. So it's wonderful. So, yeah,
absolutely. So your next stage of milk is your second stage, also considered your transitional milk. Like Catherine said, usually you don't know when you're going through these changes, but this will kind of start maybe around day 3 or 4-ish, about to the second week after birth. This is going to have high levels of fat, lactose, vitamins, and it has more calories. You'll also start getting higher volume, especially if you're nursing on demand, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here. So this is where moms will start to feel engorged. Okay, so I have lots of moms while they're still in the hospital, so usually that's well before day 3 or 4. So you haven't even hit this transitional milk phase yet. They'll say, I'm not feeling my breast get full, I don't have enough milk. Not true. Not until you reach this point do you start, and some women don't necessarily feel engorged, but I would say it's not until this phase that most women will start to feel that.
Yeah.
So breast volume, don't let those first 2-3 days make you think my breast isn't getting engorged, I don't have milk, because that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, on average, milk comes in about day 3 to 4. So when we say milk comes in, what does that mean? It's just this transitional milk, and your breasts should get bigger. They should definitely get bigger. Now, if you had a lot of fluids in labor, you have much more increased risk of engorgement. That may even be painful because those fluids basically sit in there along with the milk, and then it can be really uncomfortable.
Yeah, so that's another point that I think we'll talk about in next class, but if you are really engorged, especially from fluids during birth, you might want to kind of hand express, get some of the milk off first, because it might be difficult for a baby to latch, especially when they're brand new and they don't have a great latch yet. It might help to kind of get just a little bit for comfort, and then makes it a little easier for baby as well.
Definitely.
Other things you can do for engorgement are so obviously frequent nursing is going to help get things off. You can use a cold compress. So I have an example of what the one that we had was. So it's really just a little ice pack. It's pretty much what it is, designed for the breast. So you would put it right on there. It's really more for relief and comfort than anything else. Drink plenty of water, diuretic food, things to kind of relieve the
like watermelon,
fluids.
good in summertime. Anything, a nice juicy food is good for you to help release.
Yeah, absolutely. Cabbage leaves are another one. We don't tend to recommend that unless mom is really.
I mean, I mean, there's some things called basically chronic engorgement, which we'll probably get to in the second class. But so cabbage leaf, I would say for that.
And then also make sure that, especially in these early days, you are offering both breasts at each feeding, so that you're training your breast how much supply it needs. When it comes to breast milk, it's a law of supply and demand. Nothing any more fancy than that. So if you're training your breasts how much you need from each side, that's good, and eventually it'll level off.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and then the third stage, which starts around the second week, middle of the second week, is mature milk. And what that means is the milk is just it's more white, it's a little bit thinner, and you'll notice that it'll be able to separate out. Perhaps if you pump some and you see it in a bottle, you'll be able to see it's some thicker on the top and some thinner on the bottom. And what that is your foremilk and your hindmilk. And what is that? Your foremilk is the milk that comes out first. It's the watery liquid, and then your hindmilk is the milk that comes out later, and it's higher in fat. That's the kind of the nutrient dense part of it. So, but all together, it's it's a nutritional powerhouse. And so that'll start. And you probably definitely won't notice the difference at that point between your transitional milk and your mature milk. But
And so there are lots of moms who worry, oh well, if he only nurses a little bit in the beginning, he's not getting any hind milk. It's not true. They're still getting a little bit. It's just higher quantity fat towards the end of the feeding. So I don't want moms to think they're not getting any fat if they only nurse 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
That's not true whatsoever. So don't let that stress you. And then the other thing, which we'll talk more in the pumping video, I know Catherine will go over, is some moms, like in the picture that you guys can see here, their hind milk layer is really, really thick. I'll tell you, most moms, including myself, it's a lot thinner than that. It's not. Again, your breast tissue is responding to your baby's needs. So you're going to develop the create the milk that your baby needs. So don't stress. Just
don't
trust
compare
your body.
So many moms look and Instagram or whatever and see these moms, look how thick their milk is, or how much they're making. Don't do that. Your body knows what it's doing, and your baby is telling your body what to do. It's perfect. I promise.
Absolutely. So we always like to show this image just to give you a visual that in those early days, baby's stomach is teeny, teeny, tiny. So you don't need a large quantity of milk, which is why your breasts will not get engorged those first couple days, because they don't need that much milk. Their stomach can't handle it. You're going to make them sick if you do try to make them handle it, okay? That's why, they're going to be filling and emptying quickly, so that's why we need frequent feedings. We'll talk about the cues of hunger. We always recommend nursing on demand. So whenever baby shows you those signs of hunger, you need to feed them. Whether it's 30 minutes after the last feed or an hour, whenever it is, follow baby's hunger cues.
Yes, it's an old saying, but it should be said again. If in doubt, whip it out. What does that mean? You know, if you don't know what to do, I think the first thing is honestly offer the breast.
Yeah.
It's great for your milk supply, and most of the time, or often, it solve the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
actually, so definitely if baby is crying, we always
Yes.
offer the breast first. But crying is actually a late stage hunger cue. So that means if baby's already crying for hunger reason, you know, obviously there's, you know, dirty diapers or other reasons they might cry. But if it's a hunger cry, which mom, you will get to know their different cries. You'll know their hunger cry. If they are crying for hunger, they have been hungry for a little while.
Yeah, that's true.
So I always encourage moms to really look for those earlier signs of hunger so that they're meeting baby's needs as soon as they need them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure. So if you're in the hospital, the lactation staff or the nurses might be concerned that your baby isn't getting enough, and they may offer you a bottle of formula that looks like this. And I just want to tell you that those are 2-ounce bottles, and that is such a large amount of milk for a baby in their first few days of life. You can see in the prior graphic that the tummy size is the size of a cherry. So as you can see, this would be really, really large and really uncomfortable for them to take in that much. So don't set that bottle as your expectation of how much you should be making in those early few days. It's unrealistic expectation.
And for a visual representation, that little pink bead that you see on the lanyard, that is the size of baby's stomach at, you know, for the first couple days of life, compared to the size of that formula bottle. So don't expect that you should be feeding that whole thing when the baby's stomach is the size of that bead.
Yeah, I know. So it's crazy how there can be these subtle things that undermine our confidence in our bodies, and we want you to have confidence in your body, that your body knows what it's doing. So, and to that end, we are going to talk about cluster feeding.
Yes. So cluster feeding, how would you describe it? It's the worst.
Oh, it's really a challenge. It's really challenging. It's almost a psychological, even more challenging.
That's the moment that pretty much almost broke me. When I'm working with moms in the office, I always hear the words, "I'm not making enough." I've never heard a mom not say that. But cluster feeding is actually your baby's way of telling your body, "I'm about to go through a growth spurt, so I need you to start making more milk."
That's right.
When baby, so the demand that baby creates now, your body will make the appropriate milk supply for that in about 24 hours. It'll start to mimic that demand. So baby will start cluster feeding before they need that actual supply, because baby knows what they're doing. I mean, they don't mentally know, but they do know. Their body knows what they need. So when baby is cluster feeding, just grab the nipple butter, you know, grab some Netflix and make yourself comfortable, because so this is where baby is going to feed very frequently and sometimes for long periods as well. I remember our first few cluster feeding sessions, I was literally on the couch from like 7 to 10, and she would nurse for 30 minutes, fall asleep for 30 minutes, wake up and want to nurse from the other side for 30 minutes for a 3-hour stretch, and it's exhausting, and
it's really hard.
It dries you out. It's you know, but you just have to trust baby's instincts at that point.
Yeah, and it can often happen in the evenings. I mean, I think that's typical, especially as your baby's getting into those 2nd and 3rd weeks. Evenings can be really, really challenging because our breast milk supply is a little lower in the evenings, and so your baby's maybe cluster feeding because they're telling your body to make more overall and more at that time of day. So it's just, you'll find cluster feeding oftentimes in the evenings. And when they're going through growth spurts, and growth spurts happen, it varies, but in general, 2 weeks and 4 weeks, etc. So I always tell parents, a growth spurt will last around 2 to 3 days, and then it should pass, and the cluster feeding will go away. And if it doesn't, that's a kind of a sign to maybe get some help.
Yeah. Another time that cluster feeding happens, it isn't necessarily like a physical growth period, but developmental changes, like they start rolling over, they start crawling, start walking if you're still nursing them at that walking stage. Think about if you start a new workout program, you're probably going to need more protein, more this or that nutrients. baby's doing the same thing. They're using their muscles in a way that they've never used them
That's
before.
right.
So they're going to need the nutrients to support their body in doing that. So we see that a lot at developmental changes as
Yeah,
well.
that makes total sense. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, so the bottom line is we want you to know it varies. The psychological piece of cluster feeding is you may just be so afraid that your baby isn't getting enough milk. And I'm telling you, most of the time your baby is, and they're just telling your body to make more. So please don't stress unless for some reason this cluster feeding lasts for days and days and days. If we're talking about a week of that, yeah. But in general, 2 to 3 days, it's one of those things you just ride through.
They're tough days.
They are tough days.
And you really lean
You
on
can
your
do it.
partner at
Yeah.
that point. But just remind yourself that it does not mean that your supply is inadequate.
That's right.
So let's talk about some of the basic things you need to know. Remember, we talked about getting back to the basics. What are the basic things you need to know about getting started breastfeeding? Now, hopefully you do have good lactation support in the hospital with you. Hopefully someone coming home with you too.
Always good.
But sometimes you don't, right? There are certain factors that sometimes make that difficult. Maybe your hospital just doesn't have the best lactation support program. So we want to make sure that we give you those tools so that even if you're not getting what you need support-wise, you know what the basics are, okay?
So today we're going to talk about the benefits and how to do breastfeeding. And there's various positions, and we're going to talk about that. But the first thing I want to talk about is how important it is to be skin to skin. Skin to skin is vital for basically engaging your baby's ability to latch. It helps them, the closest to you helps them open their mouth and get engaged and ready to go. So first thing I say for new moms, take all baby's clothes off, just have a little diaper and get cuddly together. This little one is a little older, so we're not going to worry about skin to skin and make him cold today. But when we kind of the benefit, let's go from the kind of the logistics of how to get a nice latch. So you might want to use, do you typically still use a breastfeeding pillow? We're going to use a breastfeeding pillow today. Okay. Once the baby gets older, you may not need one as much. I love this pillow because it's actually up higher. So you might want to get all cozy on your bed or cozy on your chair, and you're going to have baby against you, tummy to tummy. We're just going to latch just in regular cradle probably right now. Tummy to tummy, facing you. Baby's feet, baby's knees, you want them ideally to be touching something behind you when you're in the newborn phase. Go ahead and latch them, I will. Because again, that kind of cues baby to, okay, it's time to nurse. So have baby's feet touching the couch or your chair or you, knees, and everything should be aligned nice. The spine should be super aligned well. See baby's head here is nice and straight and horizontal, and it's probably hard to see from the angle, but what I love to see is that baby's head and mama's nipples are right at the same level. Mama doesn't want to, you don't need to be leaning over like this. It'll hurt your back. You don't want that. And in baby also, we don't want baby to have to turn their head and get a stiff neck to nurse. So a couple of things I really want to make sure that we know of is that baby needs to be able to move their head back. I kind of relate baby's head when breastfeeding to a Pez dispenser. If you've ever eaten those Pez candies, and you know how it goes back, it shifts back. Baby's head needs to be able to move back. So it's tempting in the early weeks of breastfeeding to just kind of clamp your head on baby's, or clamp your hand on baby's head. But baby cannot nurse well without being able to come onto the breast with his chin and lean back. So when baby comes on, the head should be tipped back, and then you bring baby on with the chin, and then baby goes on with the, taking a nice big full mouthful of the breast. So
the next point is to make sure that you are bringing baby to breast, not breast to baby. Okay, so I had a nursing pillow there, but imagine if I didn't have that and I'm holding baby down here, if I have to do this to nurse, that's really going to kill me. I can tell you as a chiropractor, I see this all the time. Even if the baby's not a patient and mom is coming in as a patient, I always work with her on her positioning. Whether they're nursing or bottle fed, you need to make sure that you're bringing baby to a position where you're not hunching over, because that's really going to kill you. So one of the first things to do is you can use a nursing pillow, okay? That being said, some nursing pillows are thinner than others. This is the one that I use. Luckily, it is pretty thick.
This is a nice one. But there are boppies out there that are look more like this, and I think they're just really too short for most moms.
Well, especially if they're tall moms
Yeah,
like you.
maybe that's why, right?
Yeah.
I'm a tall mom. So it's just, there's going to be too much space between baby and the pillow and your breast, and it's just, yeah, it's not a good thing. So higher is good.
Right. So if that's the case and your nursing pillow is not bringing baby to the breast, so this isn't a good example because I'm a little shorter, but you could put another pillow
here
underneath. You also don't necessarily have to use a breastfeeding specific pillow. You can. We use normal sofa pillows all the time. If I happen to be on the sofa and she happened to want to nurse, which was often, so we use just whatever we had. We like the nursing pillows because they're pretty comfortable, but you use whatever will bring baby to the breast.
And I like couch, actually, any couch or other pillows. When I see families, inevitably the mom's hunched over almost all the time. But I want everybody to be so comfortable. Sometimes I'll see a mom in a football and just kind of holding baby in football, and the baby's just kind of dangling. So I'll take a pillow and I'll put the pillow around baby and tucked under baby and tucked under mom. So you're kind of just a nice nest of pillows. In your first weeks of breastfeeding, I don't want you sitting in your like stiff rocking chair, holding your baby here, leaning over, and nothing to support you. That's just it's not comfortable for you. It's gonna mess your back up.
Yeah, that's the other, making sure that you're, there may be some time, like I remember restaurants. For some reason, restaurant chairs are the least supportive chairs ever. So sometimes you're in a situation where you don't have another option, but when you're at home or at a family member's house that you go to often, make sure you find a spot that's like, that's your nursing spot, and it's a good spot. You're fully supported. It has the right pillows. It has the right back and neck support. Just make sure it's good for you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so here are the hallmarks of a really good latch. The first thing is, she's going to use, I was going to say you're not even using a V, baby's just going to hop on there. So, but we want to have a nice wide gape. See how baby opens his mouth wide, and she brings him on, and her nipple was aiming towards his palate. So we want to make sure that he gets a nice big gape, a big mouthful of that breast. You can see his upper lip is flanged really well. A lot of her areola is hidden. Now, areola sizes differ, so some mamas get all the areola in the mouth, but many mamas don't. So, but you want to see that nice big gape, and then you can see also wonderful things about it. You can see his chin. So his chin and his cheeks are moving. He's using his jaw to milk the breast. The ducts are in the areolar-ish area, and when he moves his mouth, that means he's getting a really good latch, and it's causing the milk to let down and come out. So another thing to note is there's no gap at the corner of his mouth there. There's no leaking coming. He's suckling really well. You're not hearing any clicking. And sometimes you can even see baby's ears move when they're really nursing well. Now for him, at the moment, I don't see his ears his ears moving, but he's definitely getting. We're seeing the jaw underneath here moves. If you look underneath the jaw, is a really good way to tell that your baby is nursing. Now, Sawyer's a little distracted and looking at the camera. But yeah, so this is a really nice, really good latch. He can breathe. The nostrils for him, his nostrils are not being covered by the breast tissue. It's okay for the tip of the nose to touch the breast, but you want to make sure that he can breathe out the side of his nose. So the more important thing is that the chin is touching. So yeah, this look really great, and she's got a whole wonderful, well-aligned baby. Nice, everything in the neck, the shoulders, the head, the butt, they're all in a nice line. So he's able to get a really good breastfeed.
So, as Catherine said earlier, there are a few different ways, I'm sorry, a few different ways that you can hold your breast in order to help make sure that you're getting enough tissue into baby's mouth. If you're not getting enough tissue into baby's mouth, they're not going to be getting enough milk, they're not going to be transferring well, it's also going to be really uncomfortable for you. So make sure that you use these. Unfortunately, I don't know any women in the early days of breastfeeding who can just kind of pull it out and it falls into baby's mouth and they're good to go. Got to do one of these holds to really make sure the latch is good. So one of them is the C hold. So you imagine breast is here, and then this is the hand I'm demoing with. hand would be off to the side, so you can see it's like a C shape. So that's one hold. Another is a U hold here. You can also do a V hold here. So this one we usually talk about for moms who have a little bit of an oversupply or an overactive letdown. It kind of slows that flow for them. One of the other things is a flipple hold or an exaggerated latch. And that's where you would take the breast tissue and then you kind of tickle. Can I have the puppy, please? Oh, sorry. Thank you. You would tickle baby's upper lip, which causes them to, that stimulates them to open their mouth and latch on. So you tickle their upper lip, they latch on, and you kind of shove as much tissue into their mouth as they can, or as you can, so that you make sure that they are getting a nice deep latch.
So there are various holds that you can consider using, and intuitively you may just find one that works for you, probably will, but they all have names. So we're going to kind of go over them today. And the first one is called the cradle hold. And the cradle hold is you're basically just holding your baby, your arms kind of make a cradle. You're not doing any direction or anything with your hands or arms. You're holding your baby just really relaxed, almost in the crook of your shoe.
So you're holding them with the arm that's on the same side as the breast.
That's right.
Nursing on.
Yeah. So baby's kind of head is in the crook of your elbow here, and baby's latched onto breast, and it's really wonderful and easy. I do find it's useful as after baby kind of gets a hang of breastfeeding.
Yeah, this is a hard one
Yeah.
with the early days.
Yeah. Once you're kind of like, oh yeah, I've got this. That's a good position for that.
Yeah.
It's the cross cradle hold that is most frequently used for new moms because it gives you that measure of control. You have this arm on top, kind of holding baby's back, and then it allows your other hand to be able to arrange your breast or nipple and get a nice good deep latch using that. A lot of moms do need to really kind of position their breast, especially if your breast kind of aims downwards and you want to bring up the nipple by holding up your chest a little bit.
Yeah.
So cross cradle is really great for that. And then once breastfeeding gets better and easier, then you can have a little more relaxation.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think what we did in our early days is I would always do cross cradle to first latch. Once she was on and good and really good latch, then I might hold with
exactly. You can always change, yes.
But I never got a good latch until she was very well established in breastfeeding, doing the normal cradle.
That's right.
So
yeah, it takes practice for baby to be able to latch well, and I think when we have our hand available in cross cradle, it just makes things easier.
Yes.
So yeah, football.
So football hold, there's nothing wrong with the hold itself, but I do want to talk about some ways that sometimes it's used as a crutch. So football hold is really great for moms who've had C-sections. So football hold is where, so if I'm nursing on my right breast, baby's tummy is off to my right side and feeding from the right breast. Okay, so really great for moms who have larger breasts. They feel like they can see better. Could just be a comfort issue, whatever you'd like, but also for moms who've had C-sections. So you can see if baby's off to the side, we're not interfering with the C-section scar whatsoever. So really great for that. Now, here's the caveat. I've heard some lactation professionals, pediatricians, anyone who is well-meaning trying to help mom, and if they are not, let's say they're not nursing on this side in cross cradle, whoever the assistant is will say, well, why don't you try football hold? And there's nothing wrong with football hold, but it can't be used as a crutch. So
that's right.
If you imagine, so let's say baby is turning their head, or isn't able to turn their head, in this case to the left. So baby is trying to latch to my right breast, but is having a hard time with it. But they're totally fine on this side, right? So let's say baby's neck is stuck this way. Obviously, in a cradle position, it's gonna have a hard time latching on this breast. Now you bring that baby whose neck is still turned to this baby's right side, and you put them in football hold. Oh gosh, that's really easy.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Okay? So there are two problems wrong with this. First of all, if you notice, this means that now baby, if they're having to turn to latch, baby is not tummy to tummy with you. So that's the first thing we need to address, is we're not using proper position with the latch. That's the first thing. The other thing is, if baby physically cannot turn to the other side, that's when we get lots of calls at our office as a chiropractor. Birth is tough. That's the reality of it. You know, whether it be a C-section or coming through the birth canal, there's lots of pressure that's put on their head and their neck. And at any point in that, especially when we see long labors, that can put something out of alignment in their neck. We use the term subluxation, and that can make it physically tough for them to have the range of motion that they do. Not to mention that it can affect latch and all these other things, but just talking about the turning, the range of motion of baby, if baby is not able to freely turn side to side, and for that reason you're noticing latch issues from one side to the other, please call a pediatric chiropractor, because you don't want that causing other long-term issues, especially things like skull misshapen, you know, things like that. We want to make sure we address that as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's my very first thing is when I see and it's very frequent, if I see a mom who has a very difficult time nursing their baby on one side, my recommendation is always go get some chiropractic done, get some body work done, because baby is it's just too much, it's just tension. And the breastfeeding is a whole body experience. Breastfeeding not just about the latch, it's the entire body. The entire body has to be working together and be comfortable to be able to breastfeed effectively. And if there's subluxation, if the fascia is too tight, which is the tissue that covers muscles, if things are tight, baby cannot open well, baby cannot drink well, baby cannot be comfortable to nurse, and will be fussy at the breast. So definitely, we need a team. It requires a team approach.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's really, really important notes about the football positioning. So. Laid back positioning is more easily done if you're on a couch or if you are on your bed, but laid back positioning can also be done in a chair and by scooching your hips out really far. And you're basically using gravity to help you get baby latched on. Baby should still be belly to belly with you, skin to skin, and you can kind of just position baby on the top of your breast here, and even your newborn baby can kind of what I call bobble their head and find your nipple and breast. You may use this arm to kind of cradle baby's head so they don't fall off the side, and you might even use your other hand if you need to kind of lift your breast tissue up to get baby to kind of find it. But even without all that assistance, your baby can find your breasts by themselves. And once you can get baby latched in laid back, they get a nice deep latch because the tongue drops, they're wide open gape, and it just makes it much more easy for him to get a nice suction and the breast. So
yeah. When it comes to finding food, babies have a lot more strength and head control than you think they do.
Yes, absolutely. So laid back's good.
Another time that's good is for a fast let down too. So moms who have like an oversupply, or it's coming out like a fire hydrant is how it feels for baby. This helps.
Yeah, it does. Gravity does it prevents gravity if you're laid back, and it's as far as your milk's flow. So it's pretty cool. And then finally, we can talk about sideline positioning. There's others. There's koala, but sideline is one that's very useful for you if you're just relaxing on the couch, or if you happen to be bed sharing. Sideline comes in really handy to help meet your baby's nighttime needs. And side lying is you're basically lying on your side on your bed, and you can put baby here next to you. And they need to be lined up really well with your nipples. So you might need to put a rolled up towel or receiving blanket underneath the baby's head or underneath your breast tissue to make sure that you guys are aligned. And baby just cuddles up against you and nursing on the side that's at the bottom. There is advanced laid back, is you can bring your top breast down. But those are the things you kind of figure out as you go along. I'd say side lying is easier again when your baby's a little older and has breastfeeding down pat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is a lifesaver. I spent years doing sideline breastfeeding, so yeah.
So one of the most common questions that I know I get, I'm sure you get as well, is how often should I be feeding my baby? I hear lots of moms leave the hospital saying every 2 hours. And that's true, but the statement really should be at least every 2 to 3 hours. Okay? So a lot of moms leave the hospital hearing every 2 hours. So if baby starts crying at, let's say, the 1 hour mark, they think, well, it's not hunger because it's before that 2 to 3 hour mark. Again, you want to be looking for baby's hunger cues. And if those show up before the 2 to 3 hour mark, follow them. So let's talk about what the hunger cues are. You want to go into that?
So hunger cues, early hunger cues would be, oftentimes upon waking, you'll notice them. If baby's starting to turn their head side to side, lick their lips is another one. Hand to mouth is another one. Rooting is called. Crying, as we discussed a little earlier, that's a late sign of hunger, and it's really not beneficial to wait that long because babies do have a harder time latching when they're mad.
Yeah,
when they're really hungry.
When they're mad like that, if their face is already red, they're crying, you need to calm them down before attempting to latch, because otherwise it's not going to be a good latch.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So remember, especially in those first couple days, they just were born. They tend to be very sleepy at that point. So at that point, you may need to wake them to nurse. You don't want to be going more than 1 4-hour stretch per 24-hour period. For most babies, that will tend to be in the evenings. Some babies have their days and nights confused, but especially after a couple days, just don't let them go that more than that 4-hour stretch multiple times a day. If they do, wake them up. Things that you can do to wake them up. Diaper changes were always the best one in our house.
Diaper changes, they hate them.
Tickle their face, tickle their feet. Just anything that would stimulate them, wake them up.
I like laying them flat. Laying them flat on the surface, because if they're on you, any skin to skin is going to make them relax. So put them down flat on the receiving blanket. That'll wake them up usually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So another really huge concern for all parents is whether, is your baby getting enough milk? And that, of course, is a really important thing for every parent to know. Is when you're breastfeeding, it's harder. It's not like bottles where you can see how much they're taking in. So these are the things that you need to look at to make sure that your baby is getting enough.
One of my favorite things is when you go to the pediatrician and they say, how many ounces are they drinking per day? I don't know.
But this much full, I know, you're like, it doesn't work that way.
So we measure with other things.
That's right. So the first one we should look to is weight gain. So overall, we're looking for between 5 and 7 ounces per week, which works out to about 1 ounce a day, and over time in a month, it's about 2 pounds a month. But so, with a caveat that the first few days of life, while you're still in the colostral phase of lactation, where you're making small volume, your baby will most likely start losing weight until your transitional milk comes in. So these things where I'm talking about weight gain, really looking for after day 4 when your transitional milk comes in. So weight gain is a big one.
Yeah, do you care if I kind of insert? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple soapboxes here. One is weight gain is really tough for you to know at home, like
That's
between your pediatrician visits. It's very hard to know. And I also don't recommend doing weighted feeds by yourself. So if you have a lactation professional coming to your home, or you're going to the pediatrician and they want to do a weighted feed, this is where they'll weigh the baby, you'll feed them, and then you'll weigh them again, see how much they're getting. So that's a pretty accurate way to know how much they're getting, but I don't recommend you doing it on your own, because usually that creates a lot more anxiety for most moms.
I think so.
Yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing with weight gain is I've seen a lot of parents perhaps be misled is kind of my little soapbox here. So kind of that safe parameter is up to 10% weight loss. Beyond that, we might need to have some intervention there. But up to 10% weight loss, and then they need to be back at birth weight by the 2nd week. Okay? I've seen some pediatricians say that it needs to be by the 1 week mark. It's not true. It's 2 weeks.
That's pretty aggressive.
And then the other thing is, if you had an epidural or any sort of fluids throughout labor, that will artificially increase baby's birth weight.
That's right.
Okay, so because they're going to take on some of those fluids too.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do, they're going to take that initial right at birth weight, and that's fine. You put that on their birth certificate. It's all good to go. But don't count their starting birth weight until that 24-hour mark. They're going to be weighing them constantly, definitely at the 24-hour mark. Take that one as your starting point, because they'll have gotten most of the fluids off by that point. So when you're talking about that 10% weight loss, it should come from that 24-hour mark, not from including the artificial fluids.
It can really cause a lot of stress if a pediatrician expects that, they may get surprised or make you concerned that your baby's lost too much weight. But if you do have a lot of fluids during labor, you've had an induction, long labor, their baby is going to keep that, and it will look like artificial loss of weight, and when that's not really the case.
Right. It's just the fluids.
Yeah. So those are important points, definitely. So, and it's true, just with that caveat too, that most parents don't necessarily have very frequent weight follow-up. So, with a pediatrician or whatever. So I think if you are in doubt, you can get a lactation person to come and help you, or go to a clinic and just do a weigh. But I don't want you to obsess about it either.
Yes.
No obsessing. Diaper output is probably the easiest thing for you to look at, because it's just you're dealing with it every day. And for expected diaper output for the first few days of life is the number of poops per day of life. So if they're 1 day old, one poop a day, 2 days, 2 poops a day, etc., up until about 4 to 5 days. And also, by the way, the poop should be getting lighter. They're going to start with black, that thick, tarry meconium. By the day 4, the poop should be lighter brown, little yellowy, maybe little seeds in them.
You don't want it to be mucusy.
You don't want mucus. You don't want, it should not still be brown unless you've used some formula supplementation. And so you want to see those poos, and then you want to see peas. You want to see plentiful peas. Even at the beginning, we want to see a number of peas. If you see any kind of reddish color, it's called brick dust in the diaper. That's a concern that you're looking at possible dehydration for the baby. So by the time the baby is about 4 or 5 days old, then the gold standard should be 3 to 5 poops every day and 5 to 8 peas every day.
And some of those may be mixed.
And they may be mixed, and it may be hard to tell. But honestly, between poops and peas, poops are the most important factor. If I'm not seeing poops, that indicates to me the baby is not getting enough to gain weight. Yeah.
The other thing, just like when we were showing Melanie's latch there, you want to make sure that you can see that jaw motion. You have to listen very carefully, but sometimes you can hear those swallowing sounds.
It's easier when they're older to
yeah.
swallow.
Those are good indicators that they're getting the milk that they need. We talked about no clicking and things like that. And another really nice thing is baby will actually relax. So they'll usually start out hungry like this. You latch them on, they get some food in them, and they start to relax and fall open. They might fall asleep. Not too soon, but they'll fall asleep. Those are good signs that baby is getting what they need. And another easy way for you to tell is that your breast is going to feel lighter. It's not going to feel as engorged or puffy, firm. So those are all really good signs that baby's getting enough.
And with regard to sleep, your baby should not fall asleep right after a baby latches. It is actually a warning sign if baby gets on and just falls asleep real fast. But sleeping at the end of the feed, because he's relaxed and happy and full, totally normal.
Yeah. We call it milk drunk.
Milk drunk.
And it's the best.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. So I want to make sure to say something very clear to you. If you are concerned, if you do not think your baby's getting enough by the things that we were just talking about, it is very important to get lactation help right away. I'm talking by the end of the first week, because your body is laying down prolactin receptors. Your body is determining how much milk to make in these first few weeks, and it's crucial that your breasts are getting expressed very frequently, very well. And if your baby isn't doing the job, if your baby isn't drinking enough milk at the breast, then you have a risk of them not having milk supply later on. So getting help soon is the very most important thing to protect your breastfeeding relationship. So we want to get you that help.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about it all the time because a lot of our patients will come when they're already in a crisis situation.
Yeah, don't wait for crisis.
It's one of those where you've waited a little too long, and I get it. You want to figure it out. You want to try to do this without seeking someone else. But when it comes to your baby's food, you hear the term "breast is best, fed is best." At the end of the day, baby has to eat, right? So if your supply is here because the latch has not been great and we've kind of held off seeing someone, it's still going to take a little bit for your milk supply to come up, and usually in that time frame of working on that, because usually it's also not an overnight fix working on the latch.
No, it isn't.
Usually there ends up being some supplementation because baby has to eat.
That's right.
We
That's
can't starve baby, right?
That's right.
So we just really encourage you not to wait. See someone as soon as possible. I'm actually a big advocate for setting yourself up with lactation support or support groups, La Leche League. We have other local breastfeeding organizations. Set yourself up with someone while you're pregnant.
Absolutely.
No one's gonna think you're weird, because you know what? We've all been there. We've all been in those early breastfeeding days, and our honestly gonna applaud you. We're
Oh,
going
yeah.
to think it's awesome that you're
Yeah.
setting yourself up before you have an issue.
You're ahead of the game, honestly. If you can identify an IBCLC in your community and your lactation groups before you have your baby, you're going to be so much better off. I do a lot of prenatal consults because moms, you know, if they're concerned about something going into lactation, maybe you had a bad experience with your first baby, you weren't able to meet your goals. It's so great to get help and have somebody on your team. And
nobody is going to think you're weird.
Yeah, not at all. I know, and I loved when I was a La Leche League leader, it's a breastfeeding support group. I love seeing pregnant moms at the group because you can see other women breastfeed, you can hear the challenges they might be dealing with.
In our generation, there are a lot of us, myself included, who had never seen breastfeeding happen with like a friend or family member. You know, I did start seeing it professionally coming in here, but if it weren't for that, I don't think I would have seen anyone breastfeed until I tried it myself, and that's tough. That's tough
really
to
hard.
go into it without ever having seen it yourself. I think they actually did a story on a gorilla who had, I know this is a complete offshoot, but a gorilla who had never seen nursing before, so they brought a nursing mom, you know, to the window, she nursed, and then the gorilla breastfed.
That's right.
It was awesome. Like, that's so cool.
You know, to see it.
Yes,
to help us learn how to do it. So, yeah.
So at the end of the day, all you really need to successfully breastfeed is your baby and your breasts. But there are a few things, a few tools that I encourage to a lot of our moms that can really help them along their journey. So I'm going to talk to you about some of those today. So one of them is a haka. So it's a little silicone bowl, okay? First I want to talk about how to properly use it, because a lot of women will just squeeze this, put it on, and expect it to suction on, and it doesn't. I'll tell you that. You need to flip this backwards, squeeze it.
If you want to move.
Put it, oh yeah, I'll take that.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say, I can't put it on myself. Put it on the breast, flip this over, and then let go. And now you can see it's still maintaining suction because it had a good latch. It had a good latch. So it'll create lots of suction for the breast. This is something we've talked about this privately, that you don't want to overuse it because you've seen it actually, or there have been studies that actually show it creates oversupply.
It can really create oversupply if you're using it regularly. A lot of moms will be like, oh, I'm going to start saving milk up, and if you use it like that, you're creating suction, and it actually can increase your supply beyond what your baby needs, and that has a whole set of issues that are attached to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't want to create that, but it's really great for like a backup in the car, or you know, you don't want to bring your electric breast pump because there's no power supply in your car. For really great for options like that. I remember I would use it when I was coming home from work and I didn't want to pump at work, so it had been 2-3 hours since I last pumped. I would rather just come home to baby, so I'd feed her on this side, put the haka on this side. So it gave me some of that relief. It never the way I use it, it never fully emptied the breast. It would just be enough to kind of take off some of that engorgement, make me a little more comfortable, and you do get to save little bits here and there, which is nice.
You can use it as a milk collector though, as well. You know, where you can just not suction it on quite so much, and it will, and it can just kind of drip into there, which is totally fine.
Yeah, a lot of moms who will leak, that's a great option for them. We are big fans of not wasting any drop of milk, so anything you can do to save it. We've already showed you nursing pillows. There are tons of different brands. Everyone kind of has their own personal preference. You just have to find the one that works for you.
And also, again, if you're a tall person, you might need a very different pillow than if you're a little bit shorter. So I would suggest trying them out if you can at a Target or wherever you buy your supplies.
Another thing are breast pads. So a lot of moms will leak at some point in their breastfeeding journey. I was definitely not an oversupplier, so I think it was really only the early days when I was first regulating my supply that I did leak, but there are some women who leak the entire time. So
some women don't leak at all, by the way. Don't freak out if you don't leak. Not everyone leaks.
Doesn't mean you don't make milk.
That's right.
There are disposable breast pads and reusable. These are obviously initially a higher cost, but you reuse them, you toss them in the laundry. Cheaper per piece, but you have to keep buying them if you keep using them. The disposable are really nice when you're out and about and you just want to get rid of it versus having to take this home. But this saves a lot of money in the long run if especially if you're using them for a long time. So
Definitely.
another thing that I think every mom should invest in is nipple cream. So there are lots of different brands. I personally really like the Earth Mom Organic brand. Just I like the ingredients that are in there.
Quality ingredients. Look at your ingredients before you buy. I think that's also a very good brand.
Because it goes into baby's mouth.
You don't want anything with petroleum products in it. That's not a good situation. So those have beeswax and very gentle ingredients.
Yeah, so nipple cream, because especially in the cluster feeding days, you are going to want some sort of nipple cream, nipple butter, something like that.
Yeah.
So, and then the last tool that I have is this one's called a Lacti Cup, also known as a milk saver. So you can see there's a hole on the back side that your nipple would go into. So you just tuck it into your bra, put the nipple through, and I hope you can see that there's a little hole right there. So I would just put it in. This does not create any suction the way that a Hawkeye does, but it just catches drops. So you can see it's not very large. It won't catch a whole lot. But for most moms who aren't overly leaking, it's just enough. And then you can save that, pour it into a jar or whatever saving container you're using. But I really like this because then you don't run the risk of that creating that oversupply from the overstimulation.
That's right.
But you're also not wasting milk.
Right. And when you use this or any tool that is up against your breast, you just want to make sure that you're wearing not a very tight top. We don't want to put anything in your bra that's going to compress our ducts, because that can lead to blocked ducts, and that's very painful. So if you're using these like she's talking about, you use them when you're nursing, and then you take them out.
Yep, absolutely.
And in something loose. Yeah.
Yes. So we're so glad that you've joined us for this class. There are 4 big takeaways that we want to remind you of from this class. So first is that your body was designed to do this, and your baby was made to eat from you, okay?
That's right.
So you just have to trust the process. Make sure that you're coming back to the basics always. If something's still wrong, make sure that you're reaching out to a professional who can help you. Assess things like the latch. There's a whole lot going on. It's definitely not a one solution in most cases. Usually there are lots of moving pieces that need to be addressed. So don't be afraid to seek out help. Make sure you are nursing very frequently. Law of supply and demand, that's the only way that you're going to increase your supply is by increasing the demand.
That's right. Feed on demand is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure that you are watching your baby, things like weight, diapers, satisfaction, to ensure that they're getting enough, because obviously we want baby healthy and growing the way that they need to be. Another thing we didn't talk about is usually a malnourished baby is not going to be alert and responsive. They're just usually they just don't look healthy. They don't respond like a healthy baby would. So that's another good barometer for if baby's getting what they need. That's right.
And so, bottom line is, if in doubt, if you have, went over what we talked about today, and you're just concerned that your baby isn't doing well, maybe they're not nursing well at the breast, maybe you're in pain, whatever it is, get help right away. So that's the last thing. Call your local IBCLC. You can find them through the IBLCE website. There's an organization called ILCA, ILCA, and there's also just Googling your local IBCLC is a good thing. There's private practice lactation consultants like myself that come to your home, but many hospitals do have lactation support as
a lot of times
benefit.
Free, even if you weren't a patient.
You didn't deliver there. Yeah, absolutely. So please get help. So
absolutely. So something, if you are local to the Roanoke, Virginia area, that Catherine and I would like to make available for you, because we do see so many people who need some help along their journey. And Catherine and I have actually co-treated several clients and patients. So we want to make an opportunity to you so that you can see us. You'll actually get the benefit of having both of us in the room at the same time.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. Because we were talking about this ahead of time. I said, well, when I do my history, I bet you're going to get some good information that you might not otherwise ask about, and vice versa. So we're definitely going to learn a lot from each other doing this and get even more history, more understanding of what you need as a mother and baby for this. So our special offer today is that we are doing a chiropractic consult for both baby and mom, because you're both important in this breastfeeding diet.
You're a diet.
Exactly. So I want to make sure that we're addressing both of you. as well as you will get a 1-hour lactation consultation and appointment. So that's going to be, you know, the consultation of seeing what's going on and addressing
and
it,
giving you
right?
you a care plan about an hour worth of time. So we'll be able to get at least started on what you can work on.
Yeah. So there may need to be follow-up appointments there,
very much so.
but this is getting you started, and this is a really, really big piece of the puzzle. If we don't start here, we can't help you.
No.
Yeah. So
don't let until you're in pain and you're suffering, you're crying, your baby's crying.
Yeah.
Head it off.
Yeah. So
we'd love to help you.
Absolutely. If you are pregnant watching this, honestly, I would recommend just going ahead and making the appointment anyway.
Absolutely.
So all these appointments together are normally a $325 value. We're doing it for $125 because we wanted to do this as a service to you guys. We love that we're doing this as a donation class for Breastfeeding Rose. So we want to do this as a thank you guys for making that donation to them. So all you have to do is click the link in the follow-up email that you'll be receiving to make that appointment, and we would love to work with you and help you have a happy, healthy breastfeeding journey with your baby. So,
definitely.
Yeah. It's been really great chatting with you today, and I hope tomorrow that you enjoy the problem-solving class.